to get off that darkest ground. The gravity pulls you straight down. Earth from a bird's eye view. You should grow feathers and see this too. When you want to get off that darkest ground, the gravity pulls you straight down. When you want to get off that darkest ground, the gravity pulls you straight down. When you want to get off that darkest ground, the gravity pulls you straight down. Earth from a bird's eye view. You should grow feathers and see this too. When you want to get off that darkest ground, the gravity pulls you straight down. When you want to get off that darkest ground,
So good afternoon from Thailand to all of you. My name is Pranapra and I will be the MC for today's sessions. And I would like to welcome back to the ASEAN Energy Day, the comprehensive webinar for accelerating ASEAN sustainable energy innovations. So this webinar is brought to you by the ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week, or in the short name of the ASE, the ASEAN's most comprehensive international exhibition and conference on renewable energy, environmental energy efficiency, and electric vehicle technologies, which scheduled on 23rd to 26th September this year at Bangkok, Thailand. And also this webinar is a part of the 5th International Electric Vehicles Technology Conference and Exhibitions, or IEVTech, and which will be happened in the same date in September this year. And we are now at the afternoon sessions, and soon we will be discussing with the guest speaker under the topic of the ASEAN electric vehicles industry outlook in post-COVID-19. And the guest speaker will share the overview of the ASEAN's EV industry and case study by operator in the industry that are directly affected by the COVID-19. So before we start, I would like to thank you to our sponsor for today's webinar and also the partner sponsor of the ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week, FEMER, the Stronger, Better FEMER. And also just a quick note to everyone that would like to ask the questions to our speakers. So there is a Q&A button below that allows you to ask our speaker any questions during the webinars. So you can leave your question there and our moderator will pick some questions and answer live at the end of the webinar. And I would suggest you to mention the speaker name before you type the questions. So without any further ado, I would like to give the backgrounds of the moderator for today. So Dr. Pimpa Limthongkul, the Committee of the Electric Vehicles Association of Thailand, or EVAT, will be the moderator for this afternoon sessions. Dr. Pimpa has earned her PhD degree in Material Science and Engineering with a minor in Technologies and Policy from Massachusetts Institute of Technologies in USA. She has over 25 years research experience in both academics, government, and private sectors in Thailand and USA. Other than the position as the committee of EVAT, Dr. Pimpa currently holding a position as head of the Electrochemicals, Materials, and System team at Thailand National Metal and Material Technology Center, using her knowledge and experiences to develop new energy storage materials and systems, along with working with private companies towards the realizations of electrifications of vehicles, growth of renewable energy, and developments of highly efficient power grid. And now, so let me start the sessions. I would like to pass this stage to our moderator, Dr. Pimpa, to have this stage. Dr. Pimpa, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, welcome all to the webinar today, and thank you, Kun Wanapran, for the introduction. It's quite long. I guess today the focus will be with the panelists, the two panelists today who are here with us. It's my great honor to introduce you all, our two panelists today. First is Mr. Vivek Vaidya, Associate Partner at Frost & Sullivan. He has had the automotive practice in Asia and Asia Pacific and Global Urban Mobility Program, and he has over 19 years in automotive industry in brand and growth consulting, and he specializes in trends in Asian automotive markets, future of urban mobility, market entry strategy, price volume projection. And he has advised all major global vehicle manufacturers and key tier 1 suppliers. And of course, he has been invited to so many conferences across the world. His background has been in mechanical engineering and also in the management. So please welcome Mr. Vivek Vaidya. And I will be introducing the second speaker or the second panelist for today from Nissan Motor Corporation. Mr. Nirmal Nair. He's a Vice President Marketing in Asia and Oceania at Nissan Motor Corporation. He has been responsible for initiating and driving market strategies that further increase Nissan's brand presence across the region. With the emphasis on electrification, he has 2 decades of experiences in marketing in automotive sector across the region. And prior to moving to ASEAN country in Bangkok in early 2019, he has held leadership roles in Nissan Europe before. And he held a degree in mechanical engineering in bachelor degree and also MBA from INSEAD. So both of them will be giving us view on ASEAN electric vehicle industry outlook. And I guess in the first part of the webinar, the two will be giving some view and presentation. And first, I would like to invite Mr. Vaidya to give their view first, his view first for about 20 minutes. I will give the floor to Mr. Vaidya.
Thank you, Dr. Pimpa, and thank you organizers for allowing me to present my views about electric vehicle outlook in 2020. I'm going to start off with the global outlook because that is where most of the action is. And we also need to see that the ASEAN electric vehicle market is likely to follow the global trends. So I'm going to cover most of the global trends in detail. I'm going to outline what are the important trends that cover the vehicle, the batteries, and as well as the competitive scenario. So let me start. I think this is the content of my presentation. I'm going to talk about EV sales and outlook and forecast for the globe. Then I'm going to discuss about what is the impact of COVID-19 on electric vehicles, just touch upon it a little bit. It does have an impact in short term. It is going to have decline in sale in certain scenarios, in certain geographies. So I'm going to discuss that. Then I'm going to talk about key technology trends in EV batteries. Then I'm going to talk about charging station installation, as well as infrastructure as a service, which is a new business model. And post that, we will have any questions if the audience has. I'll be happy to take through the moderator. So what's changing e-mobility or electric mobility? We have outlined 8 different trends that have a profound impact on e-mobility. And I'm going to cover top 4 trends out of them. So first and foremost, it's batteries. I think, as you all know, electric vehicles is all about how well suited the batteries are, the energy density of the battery, the cost of the battery, and overall weight of the battery has a lot to do with how electric vehicles can succeed, because battery is the single largest value added item in the electric vehicle. And unless you have a strong energy credentials of a battery, it is very difficult for the electric vehicles to succeed. So from lithium to going to solid state, I think that's going to be the transition that is likely to make the electric vehicles more successful. The second part of the success depends on the charging. Charging does involve changing of customer habits. The customers are used to going to the petrol station and fill in the petrol, fill in the diesel, but with charging, the entire the habits of the customers, the way they drive, the way they park, the way they think about their car is likely to be completely different. And as a result, you need to have a multiple charging infrastructure. So you need to have slow charging infrastructure, which kind of preserves the battery, which allows the customers to charge the car and charge the vehicle, not just the car, the two-wheeler, the commercial vehicle at their own convenience, at the point of convenience, right up to the ultra fast, where it's more of an emergency or more of an intraday kind of a charge that might be required for delivery vehicles, that may be required for taxis, that may be required for anything that requires urgent charging. So the charging infrastructure has to evolve, which will be comprising of a large number of slow charging infrastructure, which is probably available at their homes or offices or any other points of location, right up to fast, rapid, and ultra fast. So a good market should have a combination of all these four charging infrastructure to coexist to provide a seamless ownership and usership experience to electric vehicles. One of the important driving factors for electric vehicles is megacities, their ultra low emission zones, and the policies of all these smart cities in general. So cities like Singapore, and I sit in Singapore, and they have announced that by year 2050, they will not allow the sale of new IC engine vehicle in the city state of Singapore. Now, similarly, you have London, you have Paris, they have also made similar announcements. So the policies of megacities are one of the most important driving factors that are driving the electric vehicles penetration much, much further. And on the competitive scenario bit, or what are the OEMs doing? I think OEMs are gearing up to have a fleet of vehicles that is IC engine as well as electric vehicle based. So the platforms that are going to come up in future are likely to be dual purpose platforms, which means that the same platform is likely to build an electric vehicle as well as the IC engine vehicle on the same platform. Platform, as you all know, is one of the biggest cost heads for OEMs, and they want to amortize that cost over a larger base and create platforms that are flexible enough to allow the transition from a completely IC based vehicle population to EV based vehicle population without causing too much of disruption. So of course, there are more trends such as infrastructure as a service, EV retailing transformation, smart grid, and cognitive and autonomous mobility era. But I thought that maybe top four trends that are shifting are batteries, charging infrastructure, policies in megacities, and the platform play, which most of the OEMs have undertaken. Now let's take a look at electric vehicle sales, outlook, and forecast. So what happened in 2019? I think we saw one of the slowest growth rate of EVs in last almost a decade. So the electric vehicles grew, of course they grew, but they grew at a considerably lower 8.8% over 2018. What's the reason? Who's the main culprit? It is China, because in most of the cases, the EV did not succeed because of the incentive plan, which now is currently withdrawn, or the time period is over. And as a result, China, which is currently the biggest market, actually faced a severe decline. Europe, which on other hand is not leading in terms of volume, but provided the required growth rate. And as you go along in my presentation, you'll realize that we are actually projecting that despite COVID-19, we are actually projecting a higher growth rate in electric vehicles in Europe. Now let's take a look at the analysis of what worked and what didn't work. So Americas had a total vehicle sale of about 370,000. APAC had just about 105,000, bulk of which came from Japan. But of course, the leading market was China, which was at about 1.19, about close to about 1.2 million units of electric vehicle that got sold in China. The breakup actually indicates that battery electric vehicles are about 80%, and just about 20% are plug-in hybrid vehicles. Tesla globally leads the number of electric vehicle sales, followed by BYD, closely followed by BYD and Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi Motors. So the top three players are significantly quite close to each other, and therefore there is a top rivalry between getting better and better volumes. So this is another view at top 10 OEMs. So one of the things that we have to acknowledge is out of top 10 players are Chinese manufacturers. Now, these Chinese manufacturers are currently selling their units in China. However, as you have seen that the growth rate in China has slowed down. So it is in all likelihood, these Chinese players are likely to turn their attention to nearby markets, turn their attention to outside China markets. And in that way, Thailand and Southeast Asia in general is likely to be one of their top 3 agendas to sell their electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, when we are talking about ASEAN, I think we have to understand that there is a threat of China starting to export their vehicles. When I say threat, it is a threat for manufacturing in Thailand, because they are likely to use their free trade agreements to ship the CPUs from China directly to Thailand, and that's why it's a threat. Otherwise, as we see, all those players who have entered Thailand have already started launching their electric vehicles, and they are probably in the forefront in making the transformation happen even in Thailand. Now let's look at what is the impact of COVID crisis. I think first and foremost, all the models that were in pipeline have been impacted. So as you can see across the board, we see that the launches have been deferred by, in some cases indefinitely, in some cases by a couple of quarters. The production start date of several models is pushed by at least 2 quarters, if not more, at least 2 quarters. And also the expansion plans are put on hold, and some of the models have also faced a cancellation. So, as you can see, there is a big impact of COVID on upcoming. So the pipeline of vehicles, the pipeline of new models have suffered significantly due to COVID-19. We continue to hold a long-term positive view on electric vehicles. And one of the reasons for that is, although in short term you may feel that electric vehicles are likely to decline because the customers are probably are not really looking out to buy vehicles, number one. Number two, they are unlikely to have very high expendable income. And also the governments, because of several COVID-19 funds that they have to pay out for protecting the jobs, for protecting the industries, they're unlikely to focus on giving incentives for electric vehicles. So as a result, in short term, you're likely to see that electric vehicles are likely to take a beating. But in long term, what has happened is, in most of the countries, because of the lockdown, you suddenly saw that the air quality in most of the cities improved significantly. In places like Thailand, in places like India, the air quality purification or pure air quality was so visible that there are reports that they could see mountains which are like 300, 400 kilometers away. The air was so clean. So this is bound to take notice, to be noticed by the city planners, because this is like a forced experiment that has happened to clean up the air quality. Because of the vehicle stoppages, because of the factory stoppages, the vehicle quality, air quality became significantly better. And once things come back to normal, most of the city planners are likely to take a note of this and are likely to enforce stricter air pollution control norms, and one of them is likely to be higher adoption of electric vehicles. So we foresee that in long term, this COVID-19 as a crisis is likely to work in benefit of electric vehicle, and especially those, not just the plug-in hybrids, but actually the battery electric vehicles are likely to succeed because they have zero tailpipe emission. So let's look at what is the impact in depth. So I've drawn a chart which shows what are the different countries and where are they on 2 axes. One is EV penetration and the other one is HEV, or hybrid electric vehicle penetration. Now there are several countries which are in this box which have exploded here. And as you can see, in short term, the penetration of hybrid electric vehicles has gone up significantly. So let's say the case in point is Germany. So before January, the hybrid electric vehicle sale was penetration was just about 2%, which has now jumped to about 9%. If you take China, also the vehicle penetration of HEV has jumped significantly. So if you talk about the entire European Union, the HEV penetration has jumped from 5% to about 9%, and also on x-axis, the EV penetration had jumped from about 5% to about 9%. So what we see is, despite the slowdown and despite the current challenges with the economy, the penetration of hybrid electric as well as battery electric vehicle is on a rise. Now let's look at what are the impacts on global markets. So we are considering three scenarios. One is what we call as low impact of COVID, then moderate impact of COVID, and high impact of COVID. In low and moderate impact, we are so basically in moderate impact, we are expecting that the markets will remain flat, just about 0.5% growth will be seen. Whereas if the impact is low, you may actually see growth in market by about 9.2%. Whereas in high impact scenario, it is likely to decline by about 9.1%. I'm going to dive into the region-wise analysis, but looking at the entire market, what we see is in a high impact scenario, we are likely to see depressed market conditions till about July or August. So we are expecting that from August, things would come back to normal and we will resume our vehicle sale, which is higher than when we went into the COVID-19 crisis. We are also seeing that in moderate and low impact scenario, the sales would bounce back more sharply. I think considering that we are talking to each other in the month of July, we are somewhere near moderate scenario as far as the electric vehicles are concerned. Let me analyze or let me give our views on what's likely to happen in American electric vehicle market. So in low impact scenario, the market will grow up by about 4.2%, whereas in other two scenarios, the market is likely to decline. And if the impact is high, then the decline is likely to be over 21%. That's a significant decline in the markets. So in a high impact scenario, we expect the impact to continue till August, and only then the recovery will start. If that were to happen, then we can expect the total vehicle sale of about 290,000 in American markets. Whereas in other two scenarios, the sales are likely to bounce back more sharply, and somewhere in the moderate scenario, we are likely to see a decline of about 7% and annual sales numbers of about 350,000 in Americas. What happens to the market shares, right? So in the year 2019, Tesla, GM, Ford, they are the clear leaders. Whereas what will happen in three different scenarios, in each of these scenarios, we expect the market share of top two players, which is Tesla and GM, likely to increase further, and they are further likely to consolidate their position in all scenarios. So EV is likely to be a market which will strengthen the scenarios of each and every market. I must highlight that the Renault Nissan Motors, although it is not listed in the table, has a market share of about 4.72%, which is also likely to increase anywhere between 6% in the low impact scenario to 5% in moderate impact. And it is likely to remain at about 3.45 in the high impact scenario. Now let's look at European sale, which is going to be like the engine for growth as far as electric vehicles are concerned. So we expect that in low impact scenario, the market is likely to grow by about 24%, whereas in high impact scenario, it will still grow, but at a much significantly lower rate at about 6.6%. Now, a natural question would be that why is it that electric vehicles are growing in Europe, despite all the challenges that we see in the world? So the clear answer to that is the focus on compliance. So most of the European Union, there is a focus on compliance to their carbon emission norms, which necessitate most of the OEMs to make sure that they sell the electric vehicle in significant quantity as a significant percentage of their total fleet. And that is the reason why we see that although there is a a challenge in terms of economy, but still electric vehicle sales are on a growth path as far as Europe is concerned. What happens to the market share? I think Renault Nissan Motors is a clear leader at about 22.8% market share by end of 2019, is likely to maintain its leadership position at about 17.6% in scenario 1 to about 12.2% in scenario 2. Since Tesla, due to their strong focus on expansion, is likely to also gain market share in European Union. Then let's quickly talk about key trends in EV battery technologies. So one of the things that we research and analyze is, although lithium-ion batteries are the current batteries which are most successful, but the scenario on battery is likely to fragment further, and more battery chemistries are coming to the fore, and it is very, very hard to predict which of them would actually be a winner. So I'm asked in many forums that which battery technology would be a winner, and to that my answer is we cannot really put our hand to it and say this is going to be a winner. But one thing is sure, that batteries are going to evolve, batteries are going to become significantly better to achieve the highest possible energy density and lowest possible weight, without which the electric vehicles will really struggle. As you can also see, the per kilowatt hour cost of the batteries is also coming down, and we expect that to go in double digits by the year 2025. So you'll have about $80 per kilowatt hour as a battery price, a unit battery price by the year 2025. Again, this is a significant boost to the electric vehicles, because that will make the electric vehicles more cost competitive, and because of which the penetration of electric vehicles will go up, and that will feed back into the batteries, because they will be able to achieve better economies of scale. Who are the major players, and what's going to happen beyond 2025? So beyond 2025, I think we strongly point towards the future as solid state batteries. And these solid state batteries, there are several OEMs and the battery companies who are essentially looking at converging, who are essentially looking at forming consortiums and making sure that they make the batteries available at the competitive price with the highest possible energy density. So I've listed some of the partnerships between BMW, Solid Power, Toyota, Panasonic. Also, you have focus on 500 mile range batteries that are going to come into play. So that will make sure that you don't have to charge the battery for almost like a week. And that is what is probably going to fuel the conversion to the electric vehicles. We also foresee that there is a lot of action in finding out newer companies making investments into newer spaces, and also acquire companies that are likely to benefit the OEM. So we are talking about companies like Hydro-Quebec, we are talking about companies like CO and Bosch, and all of these are making waves. We also keep an eye at Frost & Sullivan on what is likely to happen in future. And one of the ways to do that is to do analysis on who's filing highest number of IP rights or patents. So what we find currently is Toyota, with its top 3 companies, which are Toyota companies, are holding an edge over solid state battery patents. So Toyota Motor Company, Toyota Motor Corp, Toyota Judosha, all of these companies have actually filed a significantly high number of patents as far as solid state batteries are concerned. Of course, commercialization of patents and making sure these produced batteries are also available is a long way to go, but this is a clear indication as to which areas the OEMs are focusing on. And we strongly believe that although currently we don't really have a strong presence in electric vehicle from Toyota, but considering the solid state battery as one of the important components, Toyota is likely to play an important role in the furtherance of electric vehicles. The second group of players is actually Korean players, which is LG Chem, which is Hyundai Motor Company. So all of these companies are also trying to have their own presence felt in solid state battery, and therefore we see a significant number of patents filed by Korean companies as well. Then I'll quickly talk about some EV charging and installation base, keeping in mind that I have limited time available. So charging points in Americas, the base is continuously increasing. There are about 62,000 charging points as of now. As per our research, we have AC charging versus DC charging. Canada is strongly entrenched with about 9,700 charging points of AC charging. We also have a leading charging operators, and as you can see, I have listed more than 10 to 12 charging operators who are currently operating their charging infrastructure in Americas. This is a significant opportunity. This is an opportunity to play in mobility services space. This is still an open opportunity where not many established players or not many large players, I must say, have played an important role. And therefore, we strongly believe that this is an opportunity for newer companies who are trying to enter this mobility services space through electric vehicles. Then this is the charging points installation base for Europe, Netherlands, Germany, France. These are the top 3 countries, and these countries also see, if you remember the graph which I showed you before, Netherlands has one of the highest penetration of EVs, and they have basically most of the countries near Arctic have decided to go for electric vehicle because of their strong base in their wind generated energy. So we also see that UK and Germany lead the installation base for DC charging, and others are following the AC charging. So I would say there is no clear winner in the charging technologies as well, because they offer different value propositions, and both are likely to coexist in the market. I've listed down most of the leading EV charging operators who offer different models. Not just that, as I go along, I will show you that getting into electric vehicle charging is also seen as an opportunity by most of the players who are not currently operating in charging infrastructure. So this particular slide shows a very complex value chain of how the electricity can flow from utilities to the EV driver, and how different models are likely to be at work. So let me explain the components of value chain, and then I will show what are the different business models that exist because of that. So you have utilities which produce and distribute the electricity. Then there are charging point equipment manufacturers. Then there are charging point installers. And then there are charging point distributors. All of them feed into the charging point operators. And these operators are the ones who basically tap on the charging equipment, charging installation, and as well as the distribution. And they in turn deal with the utilities to get the electricity. And then there are aggregators. These are the third-party players who are likely to integrate the utilities with the charging point operators, and making sure that they provide an interface to the customers, to the vehicle manufacturers, to the fleet customers, so on and so forth. So it's a very complex value chain, which I'm going to show you how OEMs are trying to take benefit of. So there are multiple business models that exist, and I've highlighted about 4 business models here. So in some cases, which we call as type 1, OEMs are going to operate as CPO, that is charging point operators. So what they do is, they are the ones, so players like Hyundai, Audi, they are the ones who are likely to deal with the charging point manufacturers. They are the ones who are likely to deal with charging point operators. They are the ones who are going to provide the charging infrastructure through an e-commerce solution and through a charging point installers. That's how they are going to reach the EV drivers. Similarly, let me take another model. It's difficult to go through all the models, but let me take another model, which is at a completely different end of the spectrum. So let's take OEM as a utility. So here in this case, Volkswagen is likely to deal with the utilities, and the utilities are the ones who are likely to provide the charging infrastructure as a service to EV drivers. So multiple models exist, and what we realize is most of the OEMs are also interested in playing an important role in this entire charging service as to basically shore up their bottom lines and to play in mobility. So when a new system is coming into play, the OEMs and other value chain members don't want to just observe on how the charging service is provided, but they want to play an active role so that they are able to monetize each and every kilometer that is driven on these cars. Okay, so this actually brings me to the end of my presentation. My request, so Frost & Sullivan is a research and consulting company, and I would request all of you to benefit from a free service that we are offering. So the hyperlink that I've shown here takes you to our research portal, where you would be updated on what are the research services we produce. So we have ongoing research on electric vehicles, on batteries, on charging infrastructure, on services that are offered, or the policies that are offered by various countries, various cities. On this web link, you will find some reports are free to use, some reports are paid, which you may not be able to access without payment, but you would be able to access, and you will be able to keep in touch with the entire breadth of Frost & Sullivan coverage, and also benefit from some of the some of the free reports that are going to be available on this. So with this, I complete my presentation. I thank everyone for patient listening and hand it back to Dr. Pimpa for further discussion. If there are any questions, I request you to type it in the chat box, and after the second presentation is over, we will address all of these questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Kapung kap.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vaidya. I think this is a very packed, informative information you have given us. Very sorry we have such a short time. I was really enjoying your talk, but I guess right now we will have a bit more time to switch to the automotive producer. Mr. Naya is going to give us his view on the automotive in the EV of Nissan. So I give the floor to Mr. Naya. Are you ready? Yes, he's here. Okay.
Hello,
you
and
can go
on. I hope you can all hear me properly. So good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the chance to, having me here and helping me, giving me the platform to give you an idea of what Nissan is doing in the field of electric mobility. As was introduced by Dr. Pimpa, I look after the marketing for Nissan Motor Corporation for the Asia and Oceania region. I've moved here to Bangkok, so we're based out of Bangkok in last year in April 19, and this region has been extremely, as expected, exciting and really moving in the direction that we had hoped it would. So I'm excited to share my views and show how we are at the forefront, have always been at the forefront of delivering electrified mobility to this region. And more so than the fact that I work for a car company or I work for Nissan, which I'm extremely proud of, is that I have been an extremely avid EV user, right? So we can sit and talk a lot about EVs and how it is great, but till you use it, till one uses it, you never understand. I mean, and once you use it, I think what I say is you never go back, because it is a changer, a game changer. So what I've done here is, I think Vivek has taken us through, let's say, the landscape, what we can expect, what does the future look like, what are the, how do I say, for this electrified mobility to work on a mass scale, what is required. What I'd like to give you is a small perspective of what we as Nissan are doing in the sphere. and why we believe this is the right thing to do. So it's a short presentation, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, and then leave the floor for to questions. So so what I'd like to give you an idea is that I think Vivek touched upon this, that this part of the world, or any, I mean, wherever worldwide we see the growth of megacities. Growth of megacities comes with a lot of advantages with it, because that is, let's say, a sign of a vibrant, growing economy. But at the same time, it's a sign of congestion, right? It's a sign of stress. There's a lot of, let's say, pros and cons for the growth of megacities. And I think with Frost and Sullivan, the study that we did shows the time, as you can see in the infograph in front of you, the time, lost time rather, due to traffic congestion in these cities. And more, you have more traffic and more congestion leads to more pollution, and not just pollution in terms of air pollution, but also noise pollution. And we believe that we are sure that electrified mobility helps tackle a lot of these issues at its core. So it improves, at the end of the day, it improves the quality of life of the people living in these major cities. So and as I guess a lot of us are also based out of Bangkok. So one of the things we try to do, again, I will not play a video because it's I was told that through the webinar it'll be quite difficult to experience it properly. So I invite you to go and look at the link below, or when you get the material. It's one thing that we tried to do as an experiment here in Bangkok. We basically block the street in downtown Bangkok and measure the noise pollution, right? And it shows that the roads are much quieter and enjoyable, actually, because today that is not what you get. So it was clear for all the people who experienced it. They could straight away get the fact that if we move to electric vehicles, our perception of city life changes, and it reduces stress like never before. And that's something which is at the core of what we do as Nissan. Is our view, or our vision is to enrich people's lives and make sure that we give them an excited drive, and working with them to also reduce the stress that at least driving brings around in megacities. So this is one example of what we try to do to give a very concrete view of how electric vehicles or electrified drives can help people overcome stress within cities. Yeah? And this was one of the cornerstones of what we described for us as our electrification strategy within the ASEAN markets. So it's basically three prongs. Some of it, I guess, Vivek also touched upon. But the key thing is we would like to make electrified mobility as accessible to as many people as possible, because we believe that is how driving should be going forward, because of multiple reasons. And to do so, we are working really hard to create awareness and the benefits of electric vehicles. I mean, just the fact that we're having this discussion or this kind of forums here, I think goes a long way to show how the market or the markets are maturing towards this concept. And I think, again, as Vivek also mentioned, is that we are working together with partners to build the right level of ecosystems. Because we need to, if we do all these three together, I think raising the awareness, letting people know what EV drive is, what EVs can do, and making it accessible to as many people as possible, and working together with partners, because if this has to work, it is a public-private partnership that has to drive this forward. So finding the right partners, building the right ecosystem, we believe this will really help pick up electrified driving within this region. So as an example, on the last point, I think we're working on, we've signed an MOU with the Metropolitan Authority, Electricity Authority in Thailand. We are, I think, outside of ASEAN in Australia, we are working with the Australia's first ever vehicle to grid project, where basically we are storing energy in the car and giving it back to the grid when required. So, which is again a great opportunity, as Vivek was mentioning earlier in his presentation. Now, Nissan has a great legacy as well as heritage, and if I can use the term stripes to talk about electric mobility or electrified mobility. We've been in this since 1947. But the biggest game changer came to us in 2010 when we launched the world's first mass market electric vehicle, the Nissan Leaf. And to date, we have had around 475,000 cars on the road. That's almost 10 plus billion kilometers of kilometers driven, and 10 plus billion kilometers of data to understand how this is helping people changing or transforming their lives. Now, our electrification strategy does not just hover around fully electric powertrains. Now, I think the key thing for electric powertrains to pick up and become big is also, at the end of the day, it's a consumer choice. It is a value equation, right? All of us are consumers. We buy things or we access things when we perceive the right value. And value is subjective. So I think what we've tried to do to ensure that we can accelerate the adoption of electrified technology, and to get the mass market convinced that electric driving is key. We've recently introduced, especially in the ASEAN market, so in Thailand being the market where we actually produce it for our host country, which is Japan. We just launched the e-Power, new Nissan Kicks e-Power, having e-Power technology. So I'll explain that in a minute. But the key thing is we have two ways of approaching the market. So for people who are convinced and can go for fully electric cars, we have an offer. And for people for people whom we want to get them to move to a fully electric car, but there is an initial hesitation because of what we deem as range anxiety, or the fact that within this part of within this region, the charging infrastructure is still in a nascent stage. We want to give them the feel of the thrill of the electric drive without the worry that they need to charge it somewhere. So I think that's the two-pronged strategy or the approach that we are taking as a brand within this region to ensure that we can drive electrified mobility throughout this part of the world. And to show our commitment, I guess the fact that we are building the e-Power technology production in Thailand and exporting the Kicks e-Power from Thailand to Japan goes a long way to show our commitment towards driving electrified mobility within this region. So it's a big step for us. We're extremely proud of it. And I'd invite all of you who are here in Thailand to please go try out both the fully electric car, which is the Leaf, as well as the Nissan Kicks e-Power in showrooms near you. So just to give you a quick idea of what I mean when I say e-Power. So you have the traditional electric. So what you see on your screen is the traditional electric car, which is the battery with an inverter driving a motor and getting the torque into the wheels. Then you have what you call the conventional hybrid, so which is a parallel hybrid. So you have the engine running giving the torque, as well as a battery and a motor driving it. What we believe is, once, as I said, when I started this talk, is once you drive electric, it's very difficult for you to go back because it is a game changer. So we believe that everybody should have that feeling. So our view is that the drive should be electric. That is what we have built with the e-Power technology, where an engine powers the battery, which drives the car. So it gets the same almost instantaneous torque to the wheels, the acceleration, if people who have driven EVs can vouch for, is smooth and extremely fast. And the another proprietary thing that we have put out through this, through both electric as well as e-power technologies, is what we call e-pedal or one-pedal driving, which again, in our view, is a game changer, especially when you have bumper-to-bumper traffic, right? So it's again going to the core of what we do as a brand, which is challenging convention. So we've put out, you don't need 3 pedals to drive. You need one, which is the accelerator pedal. And working on the accelerator pedal, by modulating it, you can actually come to a complete, to slow down the car or come to a complete stop. And that's what you would need in like stopgap traffic. And this is basically reduces the brake usage a lot in city driving. But more so, it also, let's say, reduces, it eases the driving. You're just using one instead of potentially 3 or 2, and lets you enjoy the drive much more. And even, especially when you go out of the city and you're taking winding roads, it even lets you drive like you're driving like a racing car. It's basically working on the accelerator and leaving it to manage and drive the car. So again, we believe this is game changer in the markets where we have already deployed it. I mean, the customers have gone crazy with it, especially in Japan. So the other aspect to show how Nissan as a brand is committed to delivering electrified drive within the so the ASEAN market is the fact that Thailand is the first market outside of Japan where we have launched the e-power technologies, because that is again a testament to the fact that we believe this technology can really electrify this market and this region. And Thailand is the first step in a series of steps where within the midterm we would like at least one fourth of our lineup to be electrified, either through a full battery electric or through the e-power drive. The last thing I wanted to mention, I guess, is more in terms of when I talk to people on EVs. I mean, maybe not to the audience here, but it's more. I think here I'm preaching to the converted, but it's more in terms of to the general public. When you talk EV, they think about golf cars. They think about cars for old people, boring. So I think what we've tried to do as part of the awareness program that we're putting in place, and is to bust this myth that EVs are boring old people cars. Yeah, it's not. It is a cool car with, and I'm not talking about just Nissan per se, but it's in general EVs, the torque that you get, the instant acceleration. And again, I invite you to go watch these videos. And it is not to promote what we do, but it's more to understand how you can get the thrill of a race car with 0 emissions. And that connotation is just by itself is extremely satisfying. So please, I invite you to watch these videos on our YouTube channel. It gives you a much more and hopefully triggers some more interest in understanding a bit more of what we do as a brand. Here I've just touched upon a small part of what we do in terms of electrified driving, but there's much more that we do as Nissan. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And as I said, we believe the future of mobility going forward is extremely exciting, and we believe it's electric. Yeah. So I look forward to working with many of you and in this drive to make this a reality within this region. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Nair, for sharing the technological perspective of how Nissan is going, and also a very encouraging view on the technology is going to be able to penetrate and also have a more satisfaction to the driver. Is the value to the customer, not just that it's switching from the ICE engine to a cleaner environment, but also is the experience that Nissan is providing to the driver in terms of EV, and also I'm sure that other EV producers are providing similar things, maybe in the different field. And I guess it will be very exciting to try all of them. I will try to, well, the motor show has already ended. Unfortunately, the seminar is, the webinar is like right after the motor show. I guess there are so many questions from the audience, so I won't have to start on my own question. I guess I will start right off with the questions that the audience has sent, and all are very interesting. There's a question for Mr. Vivek on what country in ASEAN would produce more batteries for EV in the future. Do you have any ideas, or do you think there's any perception or perspective on this? And
So
can you?
considering EV plans, there are two countries that are on forefront, and I'm happy to say Thailand is right at the top. The level of preparedness for electric vehicles in Thailand is the highest, and that's where we think that the battery production will be the highest. The second country is Vietnam, although they have a government venture where they're trying to convert everything into electric two-wheelers and batteries, etc. So that's where they are, but we expect that the highest battery production will happen in Thailand.
I see. Okay. Well, that's some good news, because then I secure my job. Right. My team will have some work to do.
Yes, of course.
So I guess like with the battery production is like basically the price seems to be reclining. There are questions from the audience to both of the speakers. How do you see the price of EV going to move by 2025 with the price that Mr. Vaidya Vivek has already told us going to go to $80 per kilowatt hour by 2025? And how would that reduce the price of the car? Will it be more competitive even for the compared to the ICE engine in terms of ownership?
I think there is currently a significant difference. I think about 2.5 to 2.8x between the conventional car like to an electric vehicle. So it would take a fair bit of time for the prices to be equal. But as the battery price comes down and due to lower running costs of the electric vehicle, I think it will become more and more competitive for you to own electric vehicles. Layman customers definitely look at how much they are going to spend, or suppose they pay X amount extra for buying electric vehicles, then how long will it take for them to recover the money? So that's a usual customer calculation. And if the delta that you pay for owning an electric vehicle comes down because of the lower battery cost, the business case for electric vehicle will definitely go up. And I mean, this is our perspective. Maybe if Nirmal has any view, he can share.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree. I agree with that. But I think the key thing is people at this point in time are looking at the entry price point. But already today, owning, if you compare two vehicles, an ICE car and an EV car, for the 8-year average ownership today, you save on the cost of ownership already today. Yeah? So I think what we are trying to do as manufacturers is to bring that notion to consumers today, saying that you can save today. I think back of the envelope calculation was around 500,000 baht if I use local currency here, comparing to an ICE and an EV vehicle. So, but going forward, I think the key thing is I think in ASEAN what I've seen is price points talk in a certain way. And the more we go forward and more volumes overall producers make, we can bring costs down and then make it much more accessible. Yes. So our study suggests that this entire cost of ownership calculation is too complicated for the customers. So it's you have to really make it into a mathematical equation to prove that you are better. So, and that too, it takes 8 years. 8 years is a bit too long. I think
if the business case can be proven in say 4 to 5 years, I think that will be the tilting point, and you may not require any convincing to do to switch over from IC engine to electric vehicle.
Totally.
Yeah, so with that, I guess it's something that's also different in ASEAN country as the ownership, the period of ownership is quite long, right? For a car in ASEAN, I would say that. Do you agree? So there's a question I think relating to that from the audience as well. So what would with that difference in the way people carry on or own a car, or the period of time, what would you suggest or what would you advise the government in terms of prioritizing in the deployment of EVs in terms of in ASEAN, for example, either in the private car, or should it go into the public space, I mean public transportation, or should it be focused, I mean, should the government goes into focusing on the two-wheelers or heavy duty trucks or something like that? So do you have any ideas or any say on that or recommendation?
So Nirmal, you want to go first or you want me to answer this? Okay. So I think governments have to play an important role from two fronts. One is to make policies that incentivize the customers to go and purchase the vehicle. I think that is the most important role because that has a far and wide consequences. In many cases, you need to kind of force the customers or make the business case of electric vehicle stronger by either not allowing them to apply in certain areas, or to work directly with the OEMs to make sure that they have incentives to sell EVs, so on and so forth. So I would say that is a more applicable or more relevant rule for governments. As far as the government fleets are concerned, I think if the government can actually show their commitment to electrification by first electrifying the fleet that the government themselves own. So this can vary from the cars that are being used by the government officials, which are provided by the government, or the public transportation. I think public transportation is a very interesting application because there the range anxiety does not really come into picture. Every vehicle is supposed to make a fixed round. You can actually plan the charging time accordingly. It is one of the most visible part of the transport, so the vehicles keep running all the time. The business case is not of that of an individual. So the complicated equation which I just mentioned, the governments can solve that very easily. They have more resources to calculate what is the cost of ownership. So I think public transportation is a very interesting application. And also the other interesting application is, I would say, the last mile delivery, which typically in this part of the world happens on two-wheelers. So you see all the postmen either using their motorcycles or using their bicycles or something like that to do the last mile delivery. If that can be electrified, that would be a very interesting application. Of course, when it comes to passenger cars, when it comes to heavy commercial or commercial vehicle, there are various policy measures that the governments need to use to make sure that they promote electric vehicles.
Okay.
Vivek,
Yep.
just to add to what you were saying, I think one of the examples we have today already in terms of how governments are working towards incentivizing people is the example of Hong Kong, right? Mm-hmm. Where they buy back, they take back. If you have an old, let's say, old ICE car, and you give it back to buy a fully electric car, then you are exempt of all taxes. Right?
Okay.
So those kind of policies will also help. But I think the other thing, again, from experience is, as you said, it's more, one part is the incentivizing the private consumer, but also ensuring that they work in parallel on infrastructure.
Right.
Which is key, because having lived in, for example, a market like Italy, which even though has many more charging points than what you would have here, right, it was still, to use a very plain word, pain sometimes to charge. And
Right.
as a consumer, I mean, I consider, yes, I work in automotive, but at first I'm a consumer, and
Right.
I want ease. So
Right.
that's where I'm ready to pay for it, as long as I can get value and ease of it. So I think those are the areas where we need people to focus on.
True. Very true.
I see. So I guess with that, I have a question myself in terms of charging infrastructure, because people seems to think this is a chicken and egg. And with that, do you think like how important, like what's the role of the government in terms of putting in charging infrastructure for like the public in charging infrastructure, or would it be a role of any private companies who would like to invest? As Vivek has already said, that this is a new area that there's new players and there's still room to enter. But would that be really a business model for these people, or should the government intervene in some of the the area of this charging infrastructure implementation?
Yeah. So as per Frost and Sullivan's perspective, again, to fall back on my previous answer, the government has to focus on making policy that creates or that incentivizes private players to set up the charging infrastructure. The government is unlikely to reach each and every customer when it comes to charging infrastructure. It is very difficult for the governments to do. So what governments need to do is, and this is typically applicable for countries like Thailand, who are actually quite successful when it comes to promoting a particular product, like say eco car or a pickup truck. When you think about electric vehicle, you have to think of the entire value chain, and that entire value chain, electric charging is one of the most important parts. So if the governments are able to incentivize each and every member in the value chain, then that is the job of government. That is what they should do properly. I do not subscribe to the view that government should get into the business of setting up the charging infrastructure. I don't think they are geared to it. They won't be competitive. They won't be able to reach. They won't have the kind of rigor that a private player will have. So governments would be at their best if they are able to provide a proper, amenable and conducive policy framework for the private players to come and set up the infrastructure.
Okay, I guess right now the business model, there are so many models that you have shown, and I guess some of them will be clearer in the future, hopefully.
Yes.
Right now we just charge mostly. I think we studied something, people just like to charge where it's free, right, and accessible, and you can spend a lot of time. So you will see a lot of places with, I guess maybe the gas station will be very large. People can spend some time over there and charge their car, maybe EVs for that. And that model can be something that I guess will change in the future for the gasoline charging station. Maybe that's why PTT is already like putting up infrastructure like for the charging station so large, right? With coffee shops and many restaurants. But I guess that should be also other incentives like the pricing, incentives and policy from the government. So with that, I think there's a question from the audience. I'd like to know about role of EV aggregator from the perspective of EV user. That's a question to you, Vivek.
Yes. So EV aggregators is a user-friendly interface that will provide a seamless charging infrastructure to a EV user. So let's say you are dealing with an electricity company which supplies electricity to the houses. Now they will not be able to provide that required infrastructure and required service levels when it comes to charging of the car, which has to happen almost on an everyday or a twice in a week basis. So the EV aggregator is a entity which actually coordinates with the electricity supply. It coordinates with various charging equipment manufacturers and provide service at a level that the customers truly want. So that is the role that these EV aggregators are likely to play. It is also something called interpolability, which is suppose you are moving, we are driving from one city to another, and in another city, it's almost like your cell phone has a roaming facility, right? You go to different country, you automatically connect to a different preferred network, and you are able to avail concessional rates or competitive rates. So an EV aggregator is an entity which is likely to provide similar services for EV players who move from one city to another, maybe one country to another, and provide the charging services at the competitive rates, also at the required service levels.
Okay, I guess it's that clear. I think it's quite clear in terms of, I mean, it can still be very complex.
Yes.
In my perspective, but this is right now is a box at which many things can be filled in right now, because it's not yet concrete on exactly
Yes.
what's the best model.
Yeah, it's a new entity.
Yeah.
Because it's a new business. You try to think what was happening before Grab came into existence. It was very complicated. Where will I get the driver? Who download my app? How will the customer know? But now it's very smooth, right? So similarly, this is a new business, so it will take some time for everyone to get used to it. But the business model is quite strong and proven. There is a gap that needs to be filled, and that gap definitely
an opportunity.
So, yes, yes,
Yep.
and it's an opportunity not only for OEMs but also third-party players, like those who are not OEMs can also, like a fresh new startup can also join this space.
Right. Do you see that because it's something, the service is very localized in terms of
Yes.
knowing the customer, right? So it can be
Yes.
something that a new player can come in and then take a role in knowing the customer better than the OEM themselves.
Yes. Correct. So one, it needs to be closer to the customer. Second, it needs to be widely distributed. You need to make sure that you know the market very well, which type of charging is going to be used, what type of rapid or fast or slow charging services that might be required, at what location which service might be required. So it's not as easy as it seems. It's not like setting up a chain of petrol pumps and then people will queue up and fill. That it's not like that. It is because there is a variation in the charging duration. It's quite a complex thing to do, and that's why established players, like, let's say you're talking about PTT, they have real estate. They may be able to provide the space for charging, but what type of charging should be employed where is something that maybe a third party will be able to do better.
Right. This is still a question on AC/DC, fast, slow, how. Yeah. I guess that still be experiment. And I guess in the world, there's not yet one standard that's going across, right? I guess we all will have to. But that could be also a problem, though, for the deployment of EVs and adaptation, because people are not sure yet on exactly. And I have seen some problems of EVs not being able to charge because of the configuration of the charger doesn't comply with what the car is. But I guess do you think that will be resolved really soon? And is there anything that the OEM or taking efforts to consolidate all the communication protocol in the charging?
We'll get Nirmal to answer this. This is a very difficult question for me.
Very easy questions. I think as an OEM, we hedge our bets on both. Or whatever technology. It's like the Betamax and VHS question, right?
Yeah.
One will prevail sometime later, but at this point in time, there is no specific one, depending on geography, depending on policy, and what. So I think as a manufacturer, we have to hedge our bets on different ones. We cannot have one. It has to be consumer facing. So I think what we see here, for example, CHAdeMO is one example in ASEAN that we see could be prevalent, while in I think a market like Australia is very similar to Europe, which has got a CCS charges. So it's. I mean, I wish I could sit here and say, okay, my way is going to be the highway. It's not.
Right.
So at this point in time, no, there is no hard and fast rule.
I guess that's a good thing that we have certain productions in the area, so that can be adapted to whatever. I think this is something that's localized, right? So people who work in this industry can be ensured that there's still some job around because of there's so many different models of employment
Yep.
of the technologies.
We still don't have similar charging ports for mobile phones.
Yeah, exactly. I was able to say.
Right. That's true. Then you have to have like multi heads and then.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in spite of billions of phones being sold, there is no standardization. You still have an Android and an Apple and a C. So it's evolving every day. So I don't think it's likely to happen very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a question from the audience on the charging. So I will keep throwing that for a few minutes and then we'll switch to a different topic, the area. So the biggest use of EV, especially in ASEAN countries, is likely to commute between home and work. What kind of charging solution would be most efficient in this condition?
Charge at home.
Charge
Seriously,
at home.
Yeah, I mean,
seriously.
Yep.
It is the easiest, most convenient thing to do. And again, people, as per the TCO discussion we were discussing earlier, that people don't sit and calculate and stuff. On average, I think if I take the Leaf as an example, I'm not promoting, just not segueing into a product I sell, but it's the Leaf has 300 odd kilometers of range per charge. Okay, on average, you're driving is around what 30 kilometers a day, 35 kilometers a day, 50 kilometers a day. So you don't need to charge every day. And you could, depending on how you drive and stuff, you could potentially charge once a week. Now, depending on how we mentioned mega cities or moving to EVs are changing the way our lifestyle. I think moving into a mega city today changes your lifestyle already. I mean, I'm already looking at how close can I be to work to avoid getting stuck on traffic, even without thinking about what kind of car. So my view is like, we are working as a manufacturer to overcome this misnomer that you need to charge every 2 seconds. Otherwise, you're stuck somewhere. You cannot put the AC on, or you cannot. I think that's what we were trying to work on. But the easiest one today is to charge at home. And again, the EV car today, given the price point, it's not a first car of the household. It is normally a second car of the household. So, and most of these households that we've seen are also independent units in terms of villas, parking garages, so you can actually plug your car into it, and you have the 8-hour or 9-hour time to overnight charging. So at least from our perspective, that is the most convenient at this point in time. And then of course, you have quick chargers and stuff where needed, but the key thing today is plug at home. This is like a phone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Frost & Sullivan had done a global study where we found globally we had analyzed traveling patterns of over 25,000 commuters over a period of 1 year. And, surprisingly, the number that Nirmal mentioned globally, it is 80% of the customers drive 80 kilometers or less. That's just global statistics. And the total driving time, except we are not talking about taxis, we are talking about normal private driven cars, is not more than 3 hours, not more than 3 hours. So 3 hours or less. So you have an opportunity to charge your car for 21 hours a day, either at home or at work, wherever the car is parked. So you have about 21 hours when you can actually charge the car. So this charging, the range anxiety is not really a rational feeling. As long as you're used to charging your phone when you sleep. Like when you sleep, you charge your phone. Similarly, you charge your car. Should be the way to go. But of course, there are challenges because not everyone has access to a good permanent car park. Some of them park at roadside. Some of them park in high rises where you may not able to. Like in Singapore, you don't have a fixed car park. Like you have a car park within a group of car parks, but you can't say this is my parking slot. You can't say that. So in that way, providing a charging infrastructure then has to be available at every single, or have to be like an EV charging group slot where you can only EVs can be parked. So something like this has to evolve. But like Nirmal said, charge at home is probably the least cost, the longest battery life, and the most convenient option, provided the charging infrastructure can be made available.
And just to add to that, I'm just an experience, not from this part of the world, but again, I go back to Europe, is you have a lot of public parking, underground parking and stuff like that, where you have plug points, right? But people are very reluctant to let you charge because you don't know how much it's going to cost and how much you're going to take. So you actually have meters. You can plug onto that and show the parking garage how much you've consumed and pay that. Right? So and mostly in Europe, nighttime charging, because you have different rates. That's another thing which governments can look at potentially, where it is more convenient to charge. So that's why people use all electric appliances at night, because the cost of electricity is lower, right? It's not peak. So thereby you can show people the consumption and pay for that low charge that you've consumed, which is again another business opportunity within the market.
I guess, charging at home and charging slowly is the way to go. As a battery, as someone who works on battery, fast charge is not good. This is something that you can just go on doing fast charge and have a charger that can do it, but just naturally, that's going to basically make your batteries not working for a long time, right? You reduce the time no matter what. That's I want to communicate that to the audience as well as a battery person. You can do it infrequently, but we recommend you to not do it. Right, or like a few times when you have to travel a long way and you need to do a fast charge, right? So I guess right now we should switch the theme from charging to something else. There's a question for the future outlook of the automotive industry on the switching between going from the battery electric vehicles, BEV or EV, to fuel cells. There's a question asking about, is China stopping the incentive for battery EV because it's moving towards the fuel cell direction, and on whether that's going to happen soon enough? There should be something that's going on with the fuel cell industry for vehicles as well. Can you comment on that, on both of you? For both of you, on this perspective.
So China has used the incentives as a strategic tool to promote a particular technology. So when nobody was talking about EV, they started incentivizing electric vehicles, neighborhood electric vehicles, and then the entire market changed, like significant percentage of the market changed to electric vehicles. Now China is the biggest electric or battery electric market of the world. So they typically use these incentives to make sure that the local industry starts working in that direction, the investment starts getting built for that particular technology, and they slowly but surely acquire leadership position in that particular technology. So we see that's promoting a fuel cell as an attempt. It is unlikely to happen immediately. It takes, if they start giving out incentives for the technologies to develop and production capacities to take place, it will take about 3 to 5 years, and then another 3 to 5 years for the sales to pick up. So it's a long-term game. It's unlikely to happen immediately, but this is something which China does strategically to promote a particular investment.
Mm-hmm. Any view from you?
No, for me, I think our job as a manufacturer, other than bringing in innovations to consumers, is also to be ready for managing consumer demand, right? So all manufacturers that you will notice are working on all types of technologies. Is going back to the charging discussion, right?
Yep.
You never know what is going to click.
Yeah.
And so you will need to be ready. It's not going to be easy as shift from one this to another, but as Vivek mentioned, it'll happen gradually, but then you will have lead indicators letting you know more or less where a certain region or a market is going towards. and then you can adapt your supply chain in that regard. So in any manufacturer you take, I mean, if you think about it, in 2010 when we started going electric, everybody is saying, "You guys are cuckoo." I mean, it's not going to work, right? In 2020, 10 years later, the whole world is going electric. Now the question is, what kind of electric and what charging and stuff like that. So it's going to happen. So and all of us are working on different technologies. We have advanced planning, what we believe would be consumer choices, and also things that you need to take a bet on and put out in the world. So I mean, the mobile phones wouldn't have changed if Apple hadn't made this, right? We would still be on a different kind of a phone. If they've done consumer research, it never would have happened. So somebody will take a stand, like we have on electric cars, and fuel cells. You don't know what's going to happen at this point in time.
Okay, I guess it's not coming soon, but it may come. You cannot say that it won't come. So there will be something on that side of the development as well.
Everyone likes to ask who's going to be the winner. The reality is there is not going to be one winner. The reality is you're going to have all the technologies coexisting. Now the percentages of whether this is going to be 90% or whether that is going to be 90%, that will vary from country to country. Now you already see that in Scandinavian countries, electric vehicles are more than 50%. Why? Because they took a strategic step. They produce a significant amount of power from the wind. So they reckon that if they drive electric vehicles, then their footprint from the transportation is virtually zero. So therefore they promote the electric vehicles, and now you see that 50% of the vehicles are electric vehicles. So similarly, different countries, different cities will have a reason to promote different technologies. And therefore all technologies, you'll have petrol and a diesel and a LPG and a CNG and electric and everything coexisting. There is not unlikely to be one winner.
Exactly. I mean, but no, there is a winner. There's always going to be a winner. And to me, the winner is going to be the consumer in terms of the choice the person has, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, different person has different preference for different reasons. So as long as, I mean, you have satisfied customers, you will be a winner in that area, right?
That's what we're all striving for, nothing else, right? I mean, it's to ensure that we have a product that somebody wants to buy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you exist, then it means that someone wants to buy you.
If you think about it, I mean, 10 years ago, you wanted to buy a car. The question was, should I buy a petrol or diesel car? Yeah, and that's it.
Right.
It's not even that. And now it's always good as a consumer. Again, I told you, as I said, I try to work as a consumer because those are the people who wake up every day and write a check to buy something.
Yeah.
Right? So how do I get their space of mind and convince them that give me the check because that is the right thing to do? That's my job.
That's a good mindset. We are running out of time. I would like you both to give the last point. The last point at which I think a lot of people want to hear is how would you recommend ASEAN leaders to go in the progression of going towards EV adaptation? What's your key recommendation to the leaders in the countries? Who wants to go first? Maybe Vivek.
So I think I would say clear policy. By understanding the technologies, we interact with quite a few regulators, and we realize that many regulators are quite confused about where to classify a battery electric vehicle, where to classify hybrid electric vehicle and parallel and series. And so basically, first and foremost, we need to have a case where we have policymakers that are very absolutely clear about what technology does what. The second one has to be a very clear reason why we are doing electric vehicle, because that is going to percolate into the entire strategy making. Suppose the answer to that question is I'm going to follow EV because the other country is doing, then it's not a strong case. You know, you need to have your own reasons, which are going to be developed by you to basically focus on why you need to go for electric vehicles. So that's just, we call it electric vehicle imperative. So why are you doing electric vehicle? Has to be absolutely clear. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you need to look at the entire value chain, not just production, not just assembly, not just customer. You have to look at, in fact, electric vehicle is not really a production intensive game at all. It is more value chain intensive game. And you know, your charging, your value chain that provides customer experience, that is more important than the production. So you need to think of the entire value chain and create policies. And at some point in time, I mean, I may not be saying the politically correct thing, but at some point in time, you have to stop the customer from buying IC engine car and kind of nudge them or push them towards electric vehicle in a way that they will not resist. So that's the way in which, if the leaders in ASEAN country produce, then I know for sure that ASEAN would be a very vibrant and exciting market as far as EVs are concerned.
I could not agree more to what Vivek has said. Just to add, if I may, two more things is more also to, I think an economy becomes vibrant when there is competition, but there is also, as you said, a playing field which encourages competition, encourages innovation. Right? So that's kind of the policies you would need, so that people are ready to come here and try different things, right? If you only want something that's worked somewhere else, then you get the same old. So I think that's what needs to be bought in. That encourages the local population also to become entrepreneurial, get into this business. I mean, I think, again, 7-8 years ago, one of the countries with the highest amount of entrepreneurial activity on EV was Israel. Right? I mean, it's not the country you would think of when you think about EV. Right? They had different reasons and blah, 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 but at least, as Vivek mentioned, there was a clear why: energy sufficiency to a certain extent. and that leads to a lot of other things. It blooms into a lot of other things. And the last thing I would ask leaders to do is to walk the talk. Yeah, so one thing is laying out policies, talking about policies, but actually I'd really encourage people to actually start using electric cars today. So that they can be convinced. When, as I said, once you start using it, you will never go back. Get it into you, and then the policies will come automatically. That's my view.
Okay, so we should buy our EVs for all the policy, car policy makers here. Okay, I guess it's something that we can wrap up. That, well, you have, I mean, in this webinar, that at least for the policymaker, you have to have the vision that is clear, not just the policymaker, but your own perception on how you want to see things, and especially what's the reason to get going with the EVs, and then you'll have a clear vision on how you go forward in terms of customers, and also even the policymakers, and that would actually lead the world towards the growth of EV and maybe cleaner environment for us all. Today, I guess I thank you both very much for a very vibrant discussion. I mean, I like to talk to you guys more, but our time is up and we are a little bit late, 6 minutes over. Kun Pran is okay with us over there?
Yes, it's okay, because the environments of this webinar is look very relaxing, but at the same time rich of the contents, and I do sure that all the audience is happy about that, and they can learn more about the experience and also the vision shared by both of the speakers, including the moderator. So I once again, I would like to thank you to all of you for your time being in this today's webinar. So many people is asking about the presentations from both Mr. Nirmal and Mr. Vivek. So we will be sharing the presentations on our website, the ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week at the website www.asew-expo.com. So we will be sharing these presentations by the end of next week. So once again, I would like to suggest all of you to follow our media channels. So make sure that you will stay up to date to our exhibition and activity that is coming up. So for the next activity and the webinar that is coming up on the 11th of August is the Global Energy and Utility Weeks, which is an interactive virtual events featuring content-rich webinar, podcast, and training sessions, and the report, and also the virtual networking opportunities. So during the Global Energy and Utility Digital Weeks, the Informa Market and together with the EVAT will be having the sessions on 11th of August. As well, so we will invite the president of the electric vehicles in ASEAN, in Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore, and Thailand to talk about the visions of the electric vehicles around ASEAN. And we also have the guest speaker to talk at the webinar, which is Dr. Yosapong, who is the secretary of the ASEAN Federations of Electric Vehicles Associations. So the registration is now already open, so you may follow us by the QR code in this presentations and register for the sessions. So I think this is all for today. We have so many contents in the mornings and in the afternoon. I would like to thank you everyone, and I hope everybody take care of themselves because the COVID-19 is still yeah. So this is all from our side. So the other one is I would like to invite all of you, if you have a chance to, if you're in Thailand and you would like to visit the exhibitions ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week, we will have the profiles of the electric vehicles at the exhibition as well. So the event is on 23rd and 26th of September this year at Bangkok, Thailand. Okay, so I think that is all for today. So thank you very much once again for everyone. So, and I will see you again next time. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Okay, thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Here.
Fill me out with your smile. Now the sunshine brings the light. Fill me out with a flame. I will let you in this game. Take me out when I'm down. 'Cause with you I'm safe and sound. 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 Bring that beat back. Take me out when I'm down. 'Cause with you I'm safe and sound. 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 Safe and sound.